previous homeowner made a visit the night she passed away. So, my wife and I bought a house in May 2020. The house was built in the 80s and only had one previous owner before us. She was an older woman who kept the house in pristine condition. We're talking 80s appliance manuals still tucked away neatly in a drawer. The neighborhood kids would help her transport wood into the basement as there are a couple of wood-burning stoves in the house. She would invite the neighborhood over for poker nights and always had aged bourbon on deck. From what I've gathered, she was very loved in our neighborhood and was very proud of her house. Also, fun fact, her daughter was apparently a medium and would offer readings from the house. She was older and injured herself, so she had to move into assisted living. Fast forward and we've been in the house for 2 years. We had done lots of remodeling and hadn't had any strange occurrences at this point. It was the middle of the night and my dog, who sleeps in the bed with us, jumps up and starts barking and growling in the middle of our dark room. She had never done this and hasn't done it since. She was acting so strange that it got to the point where we actually walked through the entire house to make sure nobody had broken in and no animal had somehow gotten inside. Found nothing. After a while, we finally got her calmed down and went back to sleep. 2 days later, we were on a walk in the neighborhood and a neighbor who kept in close touch with the previous owner, she would visit her and send her pictures of our house with Christmas lights up, etc., informed us that she had passed away the night that our dog had her freak out. I'm convinced dogs are more sensitive than us and the old owner might have come to see what we have done with the house. But it's also easy to look at that as a coincidence. Since that night, though, lights have turned on and off by themselves. This one door is always opening and closing itself. Another door has slammed shut twice, and this giant piece of furniture somehow moved on its own. My wife and I were preparing to host a get-together with old friends, and we turned a room in the basement into essentially a party game room, pong table, giant Jenga, etc. It's an unfinished room with a cement floor, so we were thinking cleanup would be easy if needed. We have this giant old recliner that is just a heavy botch. It takes both of us to move it. We had placed the recliner out of the way in the corner. A couple of hours later, we are cleaning upstairs. My wife and I and the dog are the only ones at the house when my wife runs downstairs to grab some paper towels. She comes upstairs, looking confused, and asked if I had gained some muscle and moved the recliner on my own somehow. I hadn't. But the recliner had somehow been moved to the head of the pong table. The amount of nope I experienced at that moment. There's no explanation for how the recliner had moved. Overall, we haven't necessarily felt threatened and nothing has really escalated, so we're just kind of noticing and letting it go. But I thought it was kind of worth sharing.
If you're enjoying today's video, smash that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more videos and interesting stories. Now let's get back to the stories of our lives.
Ever since I was a child, something has been following me. When I was 6, we moved into an old house, and I used to hear all kinds of noises at night, like banging on the walls or footsteps coming up the stairs. But as I got older, the footsteps got closer until one day while I was in bed, I heard the door open and close. Then someone walked over to my bed and sat down right on top of my legs. I thought it might have been my dad or mom, but I wasn't going to find out. I carefully tried to pull them out without them knowing, but I couldn't. They were too heavy, so I just lay there terrified until I eventually fell asleep. I asked my parents the next day who was sitting on my bed, but everyone denied it. The next night it happened again, and the night after, and so on. I was always too scared to look, until one night my dad was supposed to bring me home a gift, but went out for a drink on the way home and was late, so I had to go to bed. But I couldn't sleep with every noise I heard. I thought it was him. Then I heard footsteps up the stairs, then the door opens, and he walks over, sits down on my legs. This time I was sure it was my dad, so I threw the blanket off and jumped up, but there was no one there, and when I looked down at my legs there was an ass-sized shape on my legs. Without thinking I tried to pull them out, but suddenly the ass-sized dent started moving as if some unseen person was trying to get more comfortable. As I got older, the closer he got to me, until one night he lay down beside me and put his hand around me. I was freaked out, but too scared to move, so I just lay there too scared to even breathe. I would have believed it was a real person if I had not locked the door with a key like I did every other night. My parents never believed me, not even after I woke up with deep cuts on my back, but they did take me to a doctor. Which did not go well for them because they got accused of hurting me even though I swore that it wasn't them and that I just woke up like that. I still have the scars today, but now I lie and say that I just fell, which people still don't believe because they look like whip marks. What happened next is a very long story. But now I am 40 and have kids of my own. My youngest is 12 and something is following her ever since she was a baby when we heard it talking to her on the baby monitor. The whole family has seen it multiple times. It's the shape of a little girl, but I don't think it is. We often see it hiding in her room or running past the kitchen door. We tried moving 3 times, but it keeps following her. I am afraid the same thing that happened to me will happen to her and it will be all my fault.
I'm starting to believe since working in a museum's collections department. Howdy board, as with many I've always been into the paranormal but never really believed in any of it. I've sought out ways of experiencing paranormal things, but any time I've had something I have had a way of dismissing it and could chalk it up to just a weird occurrence. About a year ago though I switched roles in the museum I work at. I've been here for 5 years and some weird things have happened, but again you can rule out most of weird coincidences. But when I moved into the collections department, we're the people who take care of the objects and artifacts in the museum's possession and on loans, things got weird. Really weird, really fast. Everyone talks about museums being haunted and it's understandable. We house and care for lots of really old, sometimes creepy objects and many of them have storied pasts. Our collection is roughly 200,000 pieces and we have some doozies. To make it short, I have been seeing shadows, hearing my name, and having lights turn on and off when I'm alone. Our storage is split into 3 areas. The upstairs mezzanine is home to our toy and puppet collections. Downstairs has 3 connected areas split into 2 rooms, textiles by itself, American materials, and ethnographic/world objects in the main area, and the 3rd area is in a separate part of the museum, split into 2, and houses larger objects and natural sciences. The most convincing evidence I have experienced for the existence of paranormal activity happened about a month ago and it's really stuck with me. To set the scene, I was in our textiles room, lower level storage, in a room off of the main area with the world objects, returning some clothing we had shown on a tour. To briefly explain the storage setup, you come down the stairs and can go left into the world objects, or right and take a turn into the American materials. However, the stairs are the only thing separating the areas, so the stairwell is more like a donut hole than anything. Turning left into world objects and immediately taking another left will let you walk perpendicular to the aisles of world objects and brings you to the right side of American materials. On that right wall looking out into American materials, is the door into textiles. It's a normal practice, like with most places, to only have lights on in an area you're working. So, I had lights on at the base of the stairwell, the very front of world objects, and that illuminated enough of my path into the textiles room. Up until now, I had had lights turn off, doors slam, heard my name and had objects move, basic things, but the stuff I could ignore, look past, or explain away. I went down the stairs into this area and was immediately overcome with panic and anxiety. The room was cold and there was just a bad energy. I turned around, sat in my office for a couple of minutes thinking I was just having a panic attack and cooling off, and decided to just ignore it. I went back down, hit the lights, beelined it into the textiles room, and started putting things back in place. I felt like I was being watched the entire time I walked through the lower level, but didn't think about it and figure I was just paranoid, but I couldn't shake this gut feeling of paranoia. Then I left the room, and that's when it got bad. I opened the door, and I can see all the way across American materials. The last shelving unit on the far wall from me is where we keep items from a famously deceased child. The family donated all of their belongings after their passing. There weren't any lights on in that area, but I could see someone. It looked like a fully grown man, probably around 6 feet tall, and the shape was hulking. But they were darker than dark. They were darker than the shadows of the room. I'm telling you guys, with my oath on whatever you want, that I could see this person that was darker than an unlit wall, and it sprinted, I mean absolutely ran as fast as I've ever seen anyone run into the closest wall. Not at me, not to scare me, but sprinted to its right, which was only about 10 feet or 3 meters away from it, into a cement wall. this all took place in about 5 seconds, and I just ignored it. I just quickly walked out of the storage, flipped the lights, and hauled it up the stairs. I got about halfway up the stairs when the hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up and I heard someone say my name and the doorknob at the base of the stairs started to turn. I didn't even stop to listen. I'm sure there's a way of explaining it again. I very much could have been having a panic attack, but the anxiety went away just about as soon as I walked back upstairs the first time. Since then, things have gotten stranger with objects moving in front of me and other people in the department or doors closing in front of us. As I said, things have happened since I've been here and there are plenty of stories of before I was in the department or at the museum, but this thing a month ago was just different. I'm only writing this now because last night I had a dream where a ghost or something was holding my mouth closed and pushing on my back, and when I woke up it was happening too. I feel like things are just getting weirder and weirder with me, and I've been looking into shadow people or other sorts of weird apparitions. If you've enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and check out more videos from the channel.